We're going to talk to Buzzy Linhart if he picks up the phone.
Hello, Wincam.
Ah, he knows who it is. Buzzy, say hello to Stephen Davis.
Hi, Stephen Davis. Let me turn Barney Frank off.
What about Barney Frank?
He's watching him on MSNBC or
Oh,
something.
good old Barney.
Have a reggae record.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, fellas.
Hi, Buzzy. So Buzzy, what was Jimi Hendrix really like? Because I remember
Which day?
someone told me, we have a couple mutual friends from the old days in New York, and someone said that you were actually very close to Jimi Hendrix, and I don't think I've ever even talked to anyone who was close to Jimi Hendrix.
The last thing he actually said to me was, he lit a Marlboro, took a drag, blew it out, held it up and said, if I can quit these, I beat everything. He was 8 months drug-free at the time of his death. And it's, people don't really know that.
Well, I saw the movie called Blue Wild Angel about the Isle of Wight performance, which was one of his last performances before he did it. It's really a knockout thing. And he actually seems very coherent and sober to me, much more so than in other films that I've seen of him. So I think I can certainly believe what you're saying.
It was his goal at one point to prove that to himself and others too, because some people in the press were rude enough to suggest that his genius was really coming from the acid, and that he would have just been another person without LSD and the drugs. And it's ridiculous, but he had been smoking and having beers since a very early age, and wanted to be able to play without those requirements or restrictions. And Dolly Dagger, his girlfriend Devin Wilson, told me that they had gone into treatment at home with doctor's help, and that Jimmy was able to clean up. She didn't have as much success, and that was her request to me, was that I pass on the word that she swears he was 8 months drug-free.
That's very inspiring to hear that. Now, Buzzy, you were one of the early singer-songwriters. In 1970, you were in the same years that
It's just because I'm so old.
Well, I'm just saying in the same year
Yes, I got to be in that, around those people, but that I was hoping to meet Woody Guthrie or Pete Seeger, and I was in a little kind of folk rock duo when I was 16 and 17, Buzzy and Tyrone. A guy who had the guitars and could drive a car and keep the business together. And one of the things that he turned me on to was the Alan Lomax book with thousands of folk songs, and not just the folk song, but they would go through it chronologically with the very earliest versions they could. And of course, many of these songs, I guess most of them had been recorded sometimes out in the work fields in Southern America when they traveled around with a Nagra portable. Well, it wasn't actually portable, weighed a couple hundred pounds, but you didn't have to plug it in. And
they worked off the car battery, I think.
I guess so. They did a lot of times. Yes.
They did. Yep. I was just telling Joe that I saw you play at the Bottom Line in 1972. Either Orleans was opening for Buzzy or Buzzy was opening for Orleans. I can't remember which way. And that you had a very beautiful girlfriend at the time. Who was pointed out to me as Buzzy Linhart's girlfriend.
The only time that let's see. No, when I played the Bottom Line, we shared the bill with Long John Baldry and Kathy McDonald. Could it have been that night?
No, I was there with Orleans, so I'm pretty sure. But on the other
Tom
hand,
Hall was such a sweet cat.
yeah, great. He's
And,
I understand he lost his bid for re-election. He was elected to Congress
Right.
Yes.
4 years ago for a 2-year term, but lost when Obama came in. He lost his seat in Congress to it's a very, very Republican district in upstate New York, and he was like the first Democrat they'd ever elected since Thomas Jefferson was alive. So
Wow.
If he hadn't been such a great guy, he never could have done it. But they have to throw everybody. If you're not helping the crowd throw everything you can underneath the bus, then you're not the kind of Republican they're encouraging.
I read in a book that you were roommates with Jimi Hendrix.
Wow, that's one of the most famous mistakes. It's just absolutely not true, and
I know that. Because you told me that.
well, no,
amazing because somebody made it up at some point or got it and didn't double check it,
And then it got into other books.
all the other books want to say the same thing.
And I interviewed the two authors that actually put that in. But Buzzy and Jimmy would jam at the Seventh Sons Loft in the Village. Seventh Sons, that
I
band.
remember the band. I saw them open I saw the Seven Sons open for the Jeff Beck Group with Grateful Dead headlining.
And the Grateful Dead
In
at the
19
Fillmore East.
Exactly, in 1968, Seven Sons, Jeff Beck Group, and Grateful Dead, and it was the first Jeff Beck Group performance in New York, and Rod Stewart was so terrified that for the first 3 songs, he sang from behind the amps. No one could see who was singing. I was in the 7th row.
Wow.
I was with this very nice girl.
Did you recognize the bass player at that time? Because I have a friend who has photos. He actually...
The bass player of the Jeff Beck Group?
Yeah.
It was Ron Wood.
Ron Wood was playing bass, and the new lead singer was Rod Stewart.
And Mick Waller on drums. Played behind the beat. He was great.
The thing I wasn't sure of.
Yeah.
Now, were you in the Seventh Sons at that gig?
Yeah, and it was 2 nights.
2 nights, right.
Exciting thing.
What did you play in the band that night on stage?
Bill Graham heard us. A couple of our roadies were on the head of the team of people who gutted that theater and rebuilt it. The Village Theater it was.
Yeah, on 2nd Avenue.
And because of that, they got to recommend us to Graham, and he heard us play, and he said what we were doing so well that he had a bad experience trying to manage some groups, but consider managing me, and offered again in Northern California just about 6 weeks before he passed away in that helicopter accident. He had seen me direct his kid in a production at Wavy Gravy's Camp Winter Rainbow School for theater training and training for life. It's a great place. And the Grateful Dead donated a stage and a light system, and 20th Century Fox donated, they say 30,000 costumes. You just take the kids over there and they pick out what they like, and then you write a play around it. And Bill Graham saw his child at graduating ceremonies and took me on his lap and hugged me and said whatever I wanted to do to call him, and we would do it.
So, Buzzy, after the Fillmore...
I just know him as just, that kind of a guy.
After the Fillmore
Major
gig...
Johnson takes me on his lap, too.
Buzzy, can you hear Stephen okay?
I missed, I heard him kind of exclaim, but no comment
All right,
lately.
he's got a question.
No, I was just going to ask if you, after the Fillmore East gig, if you had anything to eat at Ratner's Dairy Restaurant next door.
Every time. Every time. Last time I ate there, Russ Kunkel, Carly's drummer at the time, and then famously James's drummer forever and ever, Leah Kunkel's husband, and Leah is Cass Elliott's sister.
That's right. Leo's now a lawyer in Western
Herself.
Massachusetts.
But yeah, Ratner's, thanks for the memories.
There you go.
Can I ask you, Buzzy, were you Carly Simon's boyfriend?
Yes, for a few months. I think in the end that James was who she belonged with. She really was crazy about him at the time. And as she and I became closer, she knew I'd already told her, because I knew her from years earlier, so I told her that I had been married to the wrong lady and that we were in the middle of separating and divorcing. And everything was fine until Carly met Jeannie, and Jeannie was 4'11" and a half, and she was a button. And Carly said, "You gotta stay." You know, we had kids, we had twins also. So it wasn't a good idea for us at that time, but it was temporarily toward a classy lady. But
Temporarily toward, I like that.
Excellent.
just between us guys in private, real sexy.
And how did, Eddie Kramer was your engineer on that music album, right?
Yes, and co-producer. So I took Carly over. Jack Holtzman had wanted to sign her for years. As a matter of fact, at one point, Holtzman and Carly, them being together as a couple, excuse me, and
Bless you.
my wife, from who I was separating from, spent a weekend together up at some great lodge and piece of land he had up somewhere around Woodstock. And apparently he proposed marriage to her biannually or something for years. First time I remember her, she and Lucy were the singing Simon Sisters, and they had done a kids album, folk album, Itsy Bitsy Spider, etc., which means great, no royalties to be paid if they're public domain. So they put out an album on Columbia when Carly was about, I think they were 17 and 18. Are they about a year apart?
They're 3 years apart, and the first two records came out on Cap.
Cap, okay.
And then they did
A-double-P, right?
Yeah. And then later on they had that song that Lucy wrote called Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod. And they were there.
Oh, right.
And they got on.
That was an old famous poem.
Yeah, Edward
Famous
Field,
poem.
right. And they got on Hootenanny in 1964. And Jack Holtzman saw them and then said, I'd like to sign them. And that's how Carly Simon got
And I
signed.
had seen a little hootenanny as I passed through my parents' house in Cleveland, and I knew all about it because we'll call him in private in reference, Junkie Bob Gibson, one of the greatest entertainers of all time.
It's funny how he's forgotten, isn't it? No one remembers Bob Gibson anymore, but he was very...
But Bob Gibson, it was Gibson and Camp, and then it was two Bobs, and they did the Gator Horn album. It just just prepared everything to happen, and that was the inspiration for the greatest folk rock album of all time, which was Tear Down the Walls with Fred Neil and Vince Martin doing a similar thing, and then Jesse Colin Young and their great producer, Jerry Corbett, who had been a partner with Charlie Daniels through 4 or 5 albums, but they were going to die of cocaine, and are we on the radio yet?
We are on the radio, and Buzzy, I got to get back to Stephen's book, but I wanted you guys to meet on the air.
All right, that's a good way to do it. It's on record now. I told what I remembered to be the truth, and it's great to meet you, and yeah.
Great to meet you too, Buzzy. You're an important artist, and I've enjoyed your music for years, and hope to continue to do so.
Great. I want to say one thing quickly, if I could, guys, and that's that as close as we were, that once James and Carly met, she called me one night and she said, Buzzy, it wouldn't be fair to hang out with you now that James and I are together. He's too shy. He knows we were together, and it's embarrassing to him, but he loves your music. And Danny Cooch told me twice that James played my records 20 hours a day. And if something wasn't on the turntable playing, it was sitting there ready to play. He and I are both kind of shy, and when we meet, we're not sure what to say, but I had, for a code name for Comcast or something, cable, I had to pick, they said, who's your favorite singer? And I had to say James Taylor. And love you guys.
We'll talk to you soon, Buzz. Thank you so much.
Going the right direction.
All right, man.
Good afternoon, some good people. And
Bye.
forever.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
He's great.
that-
7th row you saw. The
Seven
Seventh
Sons from the 7th row, yep. With Susie Steinbach, our first date.
Really?
And then the Jeff Beck group, first time they'd ever played.
In America.
With Rod Stewart, well, actually, yeah, no, that's true. Then they came up to Boston and played the Tea Party, and on that tour. I think they actually had played the Tea Party first and then went down to New York, because most of those English bands liked to start in Boston, because A, it wasn't as intimidating, and B, the audiences, there were so many students that the audiences tended to be the same age as the bands. So bands like Fleetwood Mac and Led Zeppelin and you know, Humble Pie, and they all wanted to play the Tea Party first down
Right.
on what's it called street, Berkeley Street, in an old synagogue.